so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Friday night stream. Still don't really have a name for these yet. Need to come up with something. But welcome, and yes, consume stories responsibly. That is pretty much a mantra of my whole channel. You know, I go into these stories, these modern day mythologies, superheroes, science fiction, whatever it is, and study it from, you know, my scholarly background. I am an actual professor. You know, I'm not, you know, those of you who are regulars on my channel know that, but I am an actual professor for your university, and yeah, working on my third graduate degree. I say all this because it's not just another fanboy trying to say this is the one that I love and everybody else should love it too. You know, I actually try to talk about actual consequences, and if you accept that these stories do operate in our society as mythology, well, then that means that they have an effect. And that's just fact. I mean, we know that stories have an effect on you. As I said in the intro, they have an effect on our psychologies personally. They have an effect on our society when we accept them, you know, collectively, and start letting them shape our taboos, our values, and so forth. So we do have a responsibility, as I say, consume stories responsibly. And that's what my channel is really all about. And tonight we will talk about some specific types of stories, which as you see from the thumbnail, I've just had quite enough of, and these are the deconstructed, what if Superman was evil? Or what if a type of Superman was evil, and so forth. Now, don't get ahead of me. Don't get ahead of me. I'm not necessarily saying that every story in my every character in my thumbnail, or every story that ever does this, like what if we had an evil Superman type. I'm not necessarily saying that they're all horribly written stories, that there's no place for them whatsoever. I am going to actually talk about the ones in the thumbnail, and maybe any more if I think about them individually, and we'll go through them. What I'm talking about is the tendency that we have toward them nowadays, how ubiquitous they are, how much more preoccupied Hollywood and storytellers and writers and publishers and whatnot seem to be with telling stories of what if Supermans than the actual real one. So we'll get to that in a second. We are also going to do some recommendations tonight. And I'm going to start with one that's completely unrelated, but it's very timely, so I wanted to mention it anyway. But I am going to end up the stream by giving you some solid, if you want, what if Superman stories that honor the archetype. We're going to get into those. So that's going to be coming as well. But first and foremost, let me go ahead and mention that many of you already know this. It's not related to Superman necessarily, but Star Wars Heart of the Jedi. Many of you know about this already. I'm not going to talk about it at length. In fact, instead, in the description below, in fact, if you've been waiting for this video to go live, you might want to refresh it, because I added some things to the description that'll be there now that might not have been there if you still had this tab open on your browser or whatever for a while waiting. But I have a link to my friend Matt Wilkins' channel. Matt Wilkins, those of you who watch my Inspiration of Heroes stream, you know that he was the last actual guest we had on there. And he's a big Star Wars EU guy. He runs the EU website with some other people. and he just did a video stream on his channel last night, which talked about the Heart of the Jedi, exactly what it is, briefly in just sort of summary. It's an old book from the Star Wars EU that was just kind of lost for one reason or another. It never got published. There's a story behind it. He'll give you the details there. And then for whatever reason, they finally released it. Amazon finally released it. So this is a book from the actual proper Star Wars expanded universe that predates all of Disney's nonsense canon. A paperback book that's being released and selling on Amazon, and it is leaving any of Disney's canon Star Wars books in its dust in terms of sales numbers. They talk about that too on the stream and go into Amazon sales numbers and whatnot. And completely outselling, just shamefacing High Republic, showing that what people actually want. So one way to consume stories responsibly, and I wish I had my copy. I thought it was going to arrive today, but it's not going to arrive till tomorrow. I think it was just released last Friday, if I remember correctly. But it's a big deal. So I have a link in the description below where you can buy that. And I've got links to a bunch of things that I'm going to talk about in the description below. And if you use my links, I'm using that through my Amazon affiliate program. So I get a little percentage of that, if you buy it through that link. So if you're inclined to buy it, I wouldn't mind if you buy it through that link for me. But the book's like $10, and it's a great way to send a message to Disney. And from what I can tell, it doesn't even come with any kind of Legends banner on it. I mean, there's none in that in the image. I think I don't have it in my hand yet, so I can't tell you that for sure, but I do believe it is as it would have been sold back in the day. Those of you who maybe already have a copy can clarify in the chat. So definitely that's one playing right away. That's one place where you can consume stories responsibly right from the start. And we'll get to more recommendations and whatnot. But let me welcome the chat before I jump into more of the proper. Now, this stream was open yesterday or whatever, so I know a lot of people have made comments that just are no longer in the chat field. So forgive me for that, but it's it's the nature of YouTube. They don't keep comments in the field there forever. But I do see Ralph Runyon, welcome, Nix91, AJ Adams. I love AJ Adams comes in. He's ready to talk. And he's chatting about a lot of stuff, which is great. If I ever just have a sort of a conversation back and forth question and answer stream, definitely people like him in the chat will help that out. Sir Torrin Clegane, Nathaniel Zlozabal, Sir Torrin Clegane, I said that. Sidor, back to the drawing board. Welcome. I see my dear sound engraver is with us. That's wonderful. Tuadel Ambassador, I'm saying that right. Welcome. Schooner Tuna, Fiona Wolf, Austin Graham, Devanatal Kayan, welcome. Horizon Talker, Fizocho. But welcome everybody here. I do see I got a super chat right off the bat. Thank you very much from Owen Lister, $9.99. My goodness, sir. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. Says, I'm just personally getting tired of the evil Superman trope. It's played out. Just give me a hero that just enjoys helping people for once. It's one of the reasons why Superman, the animated series, felt refreshing. You're absolutely right. Owen. And I like you say it's played out. That's one of the points I had to make tonight. And I'll probably make it again later, but I'll make it now. You get a sense when people tell these kinds of stories that they're sort of glorying in it. It's like they think they're being really intellectual. It's kind of like I can be kind of a band snob about some of the bands I like. So, and maybe you are too, if you're a big fan of a series or you're a big fan of a band or whatever, and you hear somebody say, oh yeah, I really love that band. Like someone tells me, oh yeah, I love Aerosmith too. Oh, really? What's your favorite song? Oh, Walk This Way. Oh, so you've heard the hits, you just like whatever the radio tells you to, pleb. I was a little bit of a snob there, but it's kind of the same thing. People are like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting? Wouldn't it be that's just so interesting and fresh to have a story about a bad Superman because he's so good, and let's have a story with him. No, that's not interesting. It's not fresh. It's overdone to the limit. It's ridiculous how much it's overdone. And everybody who does it just kind of thinks, oh, we're being really avant-garde and interesting with it. No, you're not. You're being trite and cliche and gratuitous. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. So you're absolutely right. It's done to death, and we'll talk about that. As I said, we will get into, again, I just want to reiterate, because some people are coming in here. I saw it right away when I posted the stream. People who are really big Invincible fans. I almost said Irredeemable. That's a whole nother one. But Invincible fans, and it's a great comic book. It's a great show. All right, calm down. some of these shows I do absolutely hate, are comics I do absolutely hate, and I'll tell you which ones, in a second, and I'll also tell you why. But some of them, I'll say, have a place in a certain time, in a certain way in culture, can serve a purpose for the ultimate archetype. But again, the main point of it is that we're just oversaturated with this nonsense now. And as I said in the beginning, we're oversaturated with it, and they're throwing it in instead of giving us actual good Superman stories. Where are the actual Superman stories? And don't tell me Superman and Lois, because that ain't it. That's your English professor using proper English there. That ain't it. Ivar Jantz for the $5 super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Says it's getting predictable that the superheroes were the real villains the whole time. Gasp, big reveal. I know. It's kind of like, what was it, the 2000s when it was like really hip, the style of movies in the theater were to do the gotcha moments. It came after like The Sixth Sense, and all of a sudden every suspense thriller, and they started to market movies that way for a while. It was like, and this one has a twist ending you'll never see coming. We know that's always going to come. So what's the point? Movies started to be made just for the sake of a twist ending. So it was a problem. It was garbage. So yeah, that's a problem too. But I am going to go through individually, and it's going to, I'll give you individual feedback on each of the ones I listed, maybe some others if we talk about it. Before I do that, though, I want to put this in context. I want to talk about why Superman's important. And I know I talk about this a lot on my channel, but I want to hopefully here do it in a way that I don't usually talk about it. I want to give kind of a fresh angle on it, because this is and I'm trying to put that scholarly lens on here. I'm trying to put the mythologist / psychologist lens on the character, are looking at the character and what he means to society. Not everybody's a Superman fan. We know that. Not everybody here in the chat is a Superman fan. Not everybody is a fan of comic book superheroes. Know that? Sure, we know that. Not everybody feels the same way about this character individually as I do, obviously. But this character is one of the few characters out there that is so culturally ingrained in our society, and even to a certain point in the world. That S shield, that's an instantly recognizable symbol just about anywhere in the world. Your average person, who doesn't read comics or doesn't see movies or whatever, they're not going to know a lot about the his secret identity. They're not going to know about his secret life and all this kind of stuff, but they'll know certain points. They'll know that he stands for truth, justice, the American way. Usually they'll know Clark Kent, they'll know Lois Lane, they'll know kryptonite hurts him and things like that. That's getting less and less. It's getting less and less because of all these stupid deconstructions of all of the ways that Snyder tried to just completely break down the character and make him not stand for anything he traditionally stands for. And then you have people try to justify that. He made him work to that. No, you misunderstanding the archetype. It doesn't work. And he ends up standing for nothing like that. So, and that's the closest, that's what people were giving us in terms of the canon Superman. No. Or you have Superman and Lois, where you've got basically, he's Lois's purse puppy, walking around. And yes, I've seen the show, and it's ridiculous. It's the focus is on their kids. The focus is on the drama. It's a CW teeny bopper drama. It's not a Superman show. Elijah Brown for $5. Thank you very much. Says we already have evil Superman in the form of Earth 3 Ultraman. There's no point to the evil mainstream type Superman. 100% agree. And we'll talk about Ultraman. There are reasons for characters like that and different things. So we'll talk about that. But going back to the beginning of Superman, he is so ingrained in our culture. There's a reason for that, because he's a very seminal character. Even in this crosses the lines. This is regardless of whether you're a fan of him or not, or whether somebody's a fan of superheroes or not. Superman taps into a seminal archetype within us because, first of all, I'm speaking he's from Western civilization in general, or Western civilization in general. He first of all operates at the most basic foundation on the archetype of the sun god. He gets his powers from the sun. He's charged up by our Earth's yellow sun. And sun gods in history of mythology were there. They were life-giving. They were nurturing, because the sun itself was nurturing. Primitive cultures, they couldn't live without the sun. The sun gave life, and it was powerful. It was very powerful. It can burn you. It can do different things. So the sun is incredibly important, and gods that they would create to be identified with the sun, or the sun gods, are naming the sun certain things, were powerful gods, sometimes to be, kind of feared in one level, but they were very benevolent. They were very nurturing. You depended on them for your life. And then also, whether it's just a matter of semantics, I don't think there's all of that is to it, but sun gods, if you see a progression within Western mythology, there was also a progression into the sun gods being the son of God, right? You have Apollo, the son of Zeus. Same thing in Egyptian theology, Norse theology, with the different gods, being the son of God, come to earth. Sometimes they're not directly related to the sun, but then that son of God trope with Heracles, with Thor, and so forth, that became a big deal too. That the gods would have, even in races, this is like pre-Christian era, so this is races where the gods aren't necessarily loving and caring for man, but there was some sort of concern or some sort of dealing with man, at least in this one son of God character, Heracles, who would come and be a hero here among us and whatnot. So we have that tie already to Western civilization. And Western civilization also, there's a progression. If you take a Western Civ class in high school, college, or whatever, it starts at ancient Greece usually. Maybe it'll start, you'll get a few cursory things about the Near East, Mesopotamia, a little bit of Egypt, but you really dig into it when you get to ancient Greece, because that's the seat of Western civilization. Certainly from an American perspective, Greece and Rome were the seats of our neoclassical experiment that we were doing here to start our government and our culture in the American way and everything we have here. So you get a theme of progression from the ancient Greeks on into the Romans, and the things they did for civilization. Of course, they devolved many ways too. You have the quote unquote dark ages, which weren't all that dark, but in terms of the way history puts it, usually it was a bleak time until the Renaissance came and saved us or whatever. But it's a renaissance of knowledge. There's always this eye toward progress, toward scientific, technological, philosophical advances. And you can take that too far and it can end up being chronocentrism, which is ridiculous. But there is that theme of progress. And it really culminated in America in the 20s, 30s, 40s there, when you had science fiction really taking off. Before that, you had H.G. Wells. Before that, you could look back to things like Voltaire's Macromegas and stuff like that. But it really was the 20th century that really saw science fiction, and came in the pulps and everything like that. Superman was born out of that. And the original thrust of science fiction, the original that atomic punk kind of era, is a positive outlook of the future. Think of the first Star Trek series, the original series. There's a positive outlook of the future. It was, things are going to get better. And part of that was that they were living in such a dire time, with the Depression, with the Great Wars and all of that kind of thing. They needed the future to be better, but they were also making a lot of technological advances. So there was some sort of positive view of the future. And then we get this character, Superman. And he developed a little bit into this, as I talk about on my channel many times, there's a formative period. Every time a character is created that's going to end up taking such a firm hold on the public consciousness, there's a little bit of a formative period where the writers listen to the feedback of the public, and they are sort of formed a little bit. So Superman ended up flying. He became a little less of a trickster, and they really embraced the truth, justice, and the American way, and so on. So we'll get to that. So we've gotten to the creation of Superman and the creation of being that progression of Western culture. Talk about the American in particular. He's part of the American cultural fabric. I do see some super chats here, though, I want to get to before I lose them. John Miller for $5 says, I remember the Justice Lords, Justice League. At least it was unique. Now it's just to the point of stereotypical. Very true. Very true. Is that M. Siofsky for $5? Without proper heroes, society's villains cannot be understood and thus eschewed. You're absolutely correct. Without proper that's a great point. Without proper heroes, you can't understand the villains as villains. So what do you get instead? You get the Joker movie, the Coming Cruella movie, the Maleficent films. You get movies that are saying, are they really villains, though? I mean, maybe they're just kind of, if we see things the way they're... When Black Panther came out, and imbeciles everywhere were trying to say that Killmonger's the hero of that movie, guys. He's actually got it right. Are you kidding me? Are you a flippin' terrorist? I mean, do you know what he was trying to do? That's ridiculous. But we've lost our culture, our concept of heroes and the culture. And when people lose that, what's to say a villain's a villain? We get into that sort of moral relativism, which is just slippery slide into nonsense and meaningless and just ridiculousness. Terminator Joe, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. Says, I see what you're saying. To me, it's lazy, and they tend to forget how to make an actual good villains. You're supposed to hate and fear a villain, not be sympathetic. A villain is the ultimate obstacle. Very true. The villain has a part to play in the hero's story. And though you can't have sympathetic villains, there's room for that archetype. As I've said many times in my archetype videos, even as of late, the recent ones I put out, the sympathetic villain is completely overdone. Enough sympathetic villain, guys. We need the elementals too. We need real evil to fight against. And yeah, when you just have, it's the same thing. When you just have sympathetic villains, you lose the idea of what evil is. And then we get to are they even villains at all? You've got to have elemental villains, just like you have to have aspirational heroes for the cathartic motivationals to make sense, and so forth. So Superman, created in America, 20th century. And yes, he was created by two young Jewish boys. And there's a very hard strain of the Moses archetype within him. Absolutely. You know, Kal-El, Jor-El, from Krypton, these are vaguely Hebraic sounding names. In fact, Kal-El can kind of mean, I think it's sky god, you know, because El is, of course, a word for God in Hebrew, Elohim, and so forth. But Kal-El vaguely, I think you can kind of trace it to something like a sky god or whatever, which makes sense again, right? But young Kal-El is placed in his shuttle to escape certain death as an infant, and he's sent down the stream of space, you know, just like Moses sent down the Nile by his mother to escape murder, found by someone and raised. So there's a little bit of that, and he's there to set his people free. The interesting thing about it, though, is that Kal-El doesn't come to Earth to set enslaved Kryptonians free, like Moses went to Egypt to set enslaved Hebrews free. No, he goes to Earth to identify as a human and lead them into a better tomorrow, to set them free. And this is where the Christ figure of Superman comes in. Some people just roll their eyes immediately at this, and they're so tired they will say, he's not a Christ figure, he's a Moses figure. First of all, understand how typology works. Moses himself is a type of Christ. You can't divide the two. I get it. People, idiots like Zack Snyder has just like bashed it over the head. Christ. And Snyder doesn't even understand who Christ was. Snyder doesn't even understand the Christ figure. He doesn't understand what he's doing. He's just trying to throw a bunch of stuff in the wall that he thinks is interesting and whatever. It's not even original. But I get being kind of over or done with that. But you can't deny that it's there, and it's important, profound, and seminal to the character. He's. I mean, think about it. Superman's heavenly father, right? Jor-El, off there in the heavens, sent to Earth his only son. And why did he send him? So that we could be better through him, because we could be a good people. We want to be, but we lack the light to show us the way. What does it say in John chapter 1? The word was flesh, the word was made flesh, and the light came into the world. You know, people knew this. Now, writers, beyond just Siegel and Schuster, took over the character and developed it. And through that formative period, that's what he became. And he was that for decades upon decades in our culture, and remained that way, as I've said, until the arbitrary, legislated from top down change that happened in the New 52, where Dan DiDio completely doesn't understand heroes or the character at all, wanted to make him dark, edgy, so forth. That's what Snyder picked up on when he made his nonsense films. He and Nolan, these guys don't understand the character either. They're trying to tell their versions of it. They think they're ashamed. Our culture is ashamed of a hero that could just be good from the start, that doesn't need to face a tragedy. He doesn't need to overcome moral failings. Those are the cathartic motivational heroes, and they're worth it. They are good heroes, and we need those kind of heroes. But as I said, they don't work without aspirational heroes that show us that standard to strive for. That standard which says this is real good. There are people. There's a goodness in the world. It doesn't have to be learned. It can be innate. Now, we'll never make it to that point as humans, but it gives us something to strive for. We want to do that. Can you imagine? I mean, just for a second, imagine that you had Superman's powers right now. What would that mean? That would mean that you could do practically whatever you want and never get caught. You could spy on anyone, listen in on anyone in their homes. You could see anyone you wanted naked, whatever. No one would ever know except for you. You never have to work again. You could steal money from any bank you wanted to. No one would ever know except from you. You could start to justify it in your mind a little bit. Well, I'm taking from people who are corrupt corporations, and I saved a few people the other day, so of course I would deserve some compensation. You can just imagine the snowball effect, because you yourself, I myself, we are not good enough. We are not that level of purity to truly have self-control, to truly be that meek, to say, I want to lay my life down for others. And this is the crux of heroism. This is what it is. This is what these heroes try to teach us. It's, if you have these powers, if you have these abilities, they are to lay your life down for others. This is what you do. This is what you should strive for. This is what heroism is. It's to lay your life down for others. And cathartic motivational characters show us how to be us, striving for that. As I said many times, Green Arrow or Spider-Man or so forth, they show us how to try for that, screw up, and get up and try for it again. But Superman, more than any other fictional character, really, I mean that, not just comic book superheroes, but really more than any other fictional character. And you tell me if you can think of one that you think would compete with this. More than any other fictional character, Superman embodies that archetype, that paragon, that aspirational hero, in a way that just infiltrates our society, to where we know what that shield means. We know what the character stands for on some level, even if we're not into heroes, even if we're not into Superman particularly. That is what's so vital and important about Superman. Got a few more super chats here I want to get, as usual, so I don't lose them. Let's see, by Cami Anime S, $9.99 says, two-part question. Why does everyone want an evil Superman? I don't understand it. In my opinion, why do people want to see that? You can get people from the planet who have those values of evil, and even, I think you're going to say something else here in a second. Did you write it yet? I don't want to miss it if you, I'll see you in the chat there. Looking for Cami Anime. To get the second part of your question. Don't see it there. But yeah, we are going to answer that question in just a second. In fact, that's the very next thing I was going to get to. Why are we here? Why are we here? And then we'll look at these individual incarnations. Very good question. I'm glad you asked it. Why do people need that? Why do people need that? John Miller for $5. Thank you, sir. Says Kal-El was trapped in a world made of cardboard, always having to hold back, never stepping out of line. Then he takes on Darkseid. Best speech ever. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I think you mean in the animated series, of course, in the comics as well. Very good moment. Very good moment. Ryan Martinez, the ever persistent man. I work for Honey Badger Radio. I sent you an email by having you on as a guest on to talk of these subjects. I know, man. I know. I don't do many guest slots on other channels because I'm an introvert and I hate it. But yours is something that I will do. I'll get around to it, man. We had a week we were trying to schedule for, but things got crazy for me and whatnot with the end of the semester. I'll get with you. It'll happen at some point. It's not something I'll be straight up honest. As a crazy introvert, is Mr. Social Anxiety anyway. It's not a thing I enjoy doing, but I do like your format there. I like your platform. I like Honey Badger Radio. What little bit I've seen of it, it seems like really cool. So I would very much like to accommodate you at one point here. We'll make it happen. So why, to get back to this question, why are people opting for these kinds of stories? Why is that? Now, I don't think it's necessarily true that people are calling for it. I don't think we have it's a supply and demand kind of deal. I don't think people are saying, I really want stories where there's a bad character like Superman or whatever. No, we're getting writers who don't know what to do with the archetype of Superman. This is the first step of it. Why we get this. We're getting writers who just don't know what to do with this character of Superman. They think he's hard to write. They think he's too good. They think he's too dimensional. He's not, we need to break him down. We need to make him a little more interesting and blah, blah, blah. Completely misunderstanding the character or why he's so profound. And I'll get to some recommendations here in just a few. And we'll talk about, and there's many, many of them, but I'm just going to talk about a few here at the end, which are great examples of how to do this correctly. And it's not hard, but we have people who just simply can't understand it. They can't understand how to write the character or how to work this and how to make it good. So all they can do is either pretend that they're doing a real version of the character like Zack Snyder or like the CW or whatever, and end up showing a much more flawed character. They don't know how to write aspirational heroes. So they got to throw drama and flawed and stuff like that. And hey, Superman's not a two-dimensional character. He can be aspirational, and as I've said many times, he can have some doubts occasionally, but he can never doubt the seminal things in his life, that it's always right to do the right thing. It's always right to lay down your life to save others. It's always right to do this, and there's always a better way. You never have to, there's no catch-22 of, well, if I don't kill so-and-so, the other people will die. That's the wrong scenario to put in a Superman story. It's not what they're there for. So people don't know how to write it. So they opt for, they either do that, they either pretend that they're writing the real character and they can't. They end up, ruining it and deconstructing it in some way, or they just go straight slam out and write these evil analogs for Superman. And we'll get to these. We'll break these down individually here in just a moment. But first, Arcade Burns for $13. My goodness, sir. Thank you very much. Says, evil Superman stories get made now because it is more about demoralization, cynicism of Hollywood. Only good Brightburn showed was people weren't buying tickets. We're sick of grimdark stuff. You're absolutely true there. I think, well, on the one hand, something like Brightburn not doing well, that's really good to see. I agree. People are sick of grimdark stuff. On the other hand, the success of some of these garbage shows that I've talked about is a real problem. It's a real problem that people are consuming this. So this is the other side of it. It ties to something I talked about last week. People are addicted to consuming whatever is new. They can't not consume it. It can be riddled with problems. It can be riddled with deconstructions. It can be a bad story for society. And they'll think, well, I'm trying to find the good in it. So I'm actually a good person. And I'm actually, very optimistic because I can find, I like the color on that character's uniform while they're brutally killing so-and-so. No, stop it. Have some ideals, have some standards, rather, is the word I'm looking for. And people are just consuming it. So things like The Boys, people just going over the top with the Invincible and so forth. Let's start from the beginning of my little list there, and then if you have others that you want to talk about, we can talk about those to the extent that I know about them, because I don't indulge in these types of stories. I watch or experience some of it enough to kind of gauge, is this useful for the archetype in general, or is it just gratuitous, bad for the archetype, bad for culture, and so forth. Example of something good, to step away from Superman for a second before we go to these versions here. Something like Nightfall, Batman, the Nightfall story arc that took place, the great Chuck Dixon, writing on this. And this was a time when it was in the 90s, a time when Batman's Bane broke his back. Bane breaks Batman's back. So he has to heal up. He can't go out and be Batman with a broken back. He's got to heal. It's very precarious situation. Somehow, some way, I'll let you go look up the story of your own. In fact, I'll put a link to that in the description. It's one thing I failed to do, but I do have a link to it, and I'll put in there later if you want to catch that out. Check it out for yourself, to the graphic novel. This character by the name of Azrael comes in and takes over the Batmantle for Bruce while Bruce is healing. And Azrael ends up being incredibly unstable and an incredibly brutal Batman. He has a different costume. It's very sort of mech-like, with claws and weapons and stuff like that. And he's basically the Punisher out there. He's basically out there being what a lot of completely ignorant people in our culture today think that superheroes should be, or the Batman should be. Now, the reason that story works is because even in the story, it shows the people of Gotham who might have thought, Batman keeps catching the Joker, and yet he keeps escaping Arkham and doing all this evil. And, shouldn't Batman just deal with these villains decisively? It shows people with that mindset in the story, in a meta way, the readers themselves, people who call for a more brutal or a killing Batman. No, that's not the answer. That might seem like that just makes sense to, your kind of primitive, and I mean primitive literally, like an emotional reasoning, like, oh, I'm just so mad, I want him to kill. But that actually doesn't work. When you drop that standard, when Batman crosses that line, who's to stop him from crossing 1,000 other lines? That that's something that must not be crossed. And Batman Nightfall showed that story beautifully, because it wasn't Bruce Wayne falling down at all. Bruce Wayne was recuperating. Azrael is the character who's doing this, and Azrael had to be ousted, and it was the story of redeeming the mantle, redeeming what it means again. That was a great thing. I see my my camera's being a little clunky right now, so I'm going to take it off for a second to go back to my avatar while I look at these super chats, and then I'll pop back onto the camera. Usually that fixes it. So So that should work here in a second. All right. So I do have a couple super chats here. I see. Let me catch these up before we continue. Let's see. Where was the last one I read here? I did Arcade Burn. So I think the next one was Cami Anime S. Someone like Ultraman, continuing her question from before, but if you want something different from Superman, get inspiration from him and make something new and different without crapping on Superman. Exactly. Or still, quote unquote, crapping on Superman by just having a different character, an analog, that you called, not actual Superman, not anybody in his universe, not an alternate version of him or something, but an actual literal character like an Omni-Man or a Homelander or something like that. That's still a problem, right? Because that's still crapping on Superman. You continue with that with another super chat. My goodness, thank you. It says, like Goku, who has Western inspirations like Superman and Asian inspirations like Sun Wukong. I think it's a good take because it brings something new, but still has the inspiration. I really can't speak to that. A lot of people tell me that what is that, Dragon Ball Z? I think Goku. Yeah, that's something, that's something great or whatever. I've just never watched that. I kind of recently just don't really watch much anime. But yeah, I've heard good things about it, so I can't speak to that. That'd be interesting to check out one day. Another super chat here by Owen Lister. Thank you very much, sir. Says, I still question why Bruce, out of all the most qualified people to sub as Batman, he chose that most unstable and psychotic being that is Azrael. Yeah, you have to read the story. It's to find out how that actually kind of went down. It's hard to explain, and it doesn't really make any sense when you're just summing it up like I did. I mean, you would expect Tim Drake, or between Tim Drake and Nightwing, they could handle it, or something. But yeah, the story kind of goes into it a little bit. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. So let's look at these instances that I talked about on my thumbnail. All right, Injustice was the first one I had there. Injustice. Now, I know it's a comic. It's a bunch of games. I only ever played through the first video game, and I got that story. I know it's a comic. I've heard good things about the comic. I know Mike S. Miller does the art, so it's got to be amazing art because he's a very talented artist. And I've seen some of the clips, and the art style is very great. And the story of the game, I thought, okay, this has a place. It can be overdone, and I think it perhaps has been overdone. I don't think there's any reason for it to continue as long as it did. I don't think there's any reason for extra games and so forth. But I think it had a place. So the premise, for those who don't know or haven't followed it, they're taking a cue from the story of Hercules or Heracles in ancient Greece mythology. Heracles was driven mad by the goddess Hera, driven mad so that he ended up murdering his wife and his children. And in a fit of rage, and then he came to and was having to do all these, feats and everything to atone for it. Well, they took a little bit of a cue from that in the story. It had this alternate Earth, so it's not our Earth, it's not our Superman, it's not our heroes or whatever. But there's this alternate Earth in which the Joker drives Superman mad to the point where he kills Lois and I think her unborn son at that point, or unborn child or something like that. And Superman goes crazy and murders the Joker. And decides that he no more holding back. He's going to, if he's going to rule and make sure peace is there, he's going to do it as a dictator. And Superman becomes this violent, bloody dictator to the world who's no longer playing, as he quotes it, patty cake or whatever with the criminals. It's a horrible, horrible scenario. But then you have that Batman of that Earth contact our Justice League, our real Superman, our real deal characters to come over and help. Take that Superman to justice, and all the heroes that went over onto his side, take them to justice and lead them in a real heroism. So there's room for a story like that because, like Nightfall did with Batman, it does explore and show you the reason why it would be a very bad idea for Superman to suddenly not be an aspirational hero. Incredibly bad idea. There's that slope that goes right down into evil. So stories like that, you could say, have a place. They have a place, but they can be overdone. They can be overgloried in. And even though I think the basic Injustice story can work, I haven't followed it much after that because it just, why would I want to? But it has been overgloried in. There are really cool, like I said, I hadn't read the comics, but I did see some clips, images. And there was one very touching moment where the Jimmy Olsen of that universe was just, what's the word I'm looking for? He was just ruminating over and just really bewailing the fact that his hero, I mean, Superman was everything to Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen's his number one fan. his hero, the one who tells him to be better, the one that he just hung everything on in terms of inspiration, to go south like that, and the impact it would have on Jimmy and the world around him and stuff like that. So you could have some touching moments like that again explore why this would not be a good thing to happen, but it can be overgloried. The next thing I had on the thumbnail, I know the comic of The Boys came out first, but I think the movie Brightburn came out before the Amazon series The Boys, I think. Brightburn is the stupidest idea from the ground up. It is just utterly baffling. It is ridiculous how this ever got greenlit. Again, it's just people who think this is, oh, it's so interesting. Oh yeah, what if Kal-El growing up was actually evil? Oh, that'd be so. No, it's been done to death. Stop it. And it was just, what if Superman's origin story is a horror story? Ridiculous. If you want to tell a horror story about an alien come to Earth, go tell that. Stop using the Superman tropes, because what you're doing is you're saying that we as a culture are now more interested in telling what if he was evil stories than stories that actually get him right, that he's actually a good and aspirational hero. We're no longer even interested in telling those stories. I mean, what were the on-screen adaptations of Superman at that point? Zack Snyder's. That was it. And then you put out Brightburn too. It's like, you can't do Elseworld. You can't do what if they were evil takes when you haven't even done proper, let's let them still be true and good and iconic takes, Brightburn's a train wreck. I never watched it. Will never watch it. I don't care if it was the most well-written horror film ever. Deal breaker from the foundation up. Same thing with The Boys. I'm sorry if there are Boys fans here. Again, I've seen clips of it enough to make me sick for a decade. I mean, just disgusting. What kind of human? I'm sorry. Look, I have friends who watch this show. So once again, I'm not personally insulting or thinking of anybody in specific or coming after people. But again, I'm just not going to stay quiet about this anymore. I hate this concept of, hey man, just support what you like and let other people just like what they want to like. And no, because it doesn't not affect me. It does affect me. It affects our culture. You can't just go do whatever you want. It does affect me. It does affect our culture that we live in. What kind of human being wants to spend time in a story where heroes are raping and killing and murdering and just being the worst type of, there's no redeemable facets to that story. There's no heroes to look up to. There's no people even really trying to come in there and fix things, at least in any way that they actually, you stick with them and you want to spend time with their story. There's nothing like that. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, I can only think of sheer boredom or fear of missing out that makes people tune into these stories. Again, that addiction. There's new content. I must consume it. Got to be in the know when I talk about it on Twitter. It's awful. Divine Comedy Productions for $9.99. Thank you very much. Says they want Ultraman. And what's worse is that they're forcing that into Superman, an archetype he created. You're absolutely true. And Ultraman, just for people who don't know, is DC Comics' bad version of Superman. So in an alternate universe, there's the Crime Syndicate, which is like the Justice League, but they're all supervillains. So you've got Ultraman for Superman, Superwoman for Wonder Woman, Owlman for Batman, and so on. And there's actually a really good animated film, DC animated film, before they went into their New 52 garbage, which I forget the name of it. Mark Harmon did the voice for Superman, which was kind of cool, but it was really quite well done. And that's something that you can check out if you're wanting into that. But it's an alternate universe, right? So it's that's where things go bad. That's where things are the way that they shouldn't be. And Ultraman's a lesson against that. Arcade Burns for $5. Thank you very much. Says the comics are prequels. I'll sum up Injustice 2. This corrupt version of Supes is gone. Supergirl is the world's aspirational hero now. She really emerges the aspirational hero. Interesting. I just I have a limited interest in capacity for those types of stories in those universes. Like I said, nothing against the basic story of Injustice. I think it can serve a purpose, in what it is, but it doesn't. You don't keep it going and glorying in that kind of take. That's just me. If other people really enjoy it and think that the second one or the more of the stories afterwards continue to do the work of the first, maybe. I just have a limited capacity for that kind of thing. I think I caught up on the super chats there. No, I didn't. I have a one by John Miller. Thank you very much for $5. Says the most thought-provoking evil Superman was Superman versus the Elite climax. Yes. Oh man, that is so good. That is how you make people think. Will Supes hold his principles? Oh man, I'm so glad you brought that up, but I have to be so careful here. So careful. Because there are people here who haven't seen Superman versus the Elite or haven't read, the comic it was based on. What's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way. It is such a vitally important Superman story to take in, to really get where the character is today and how our society desperately needs him today. Superman versus the Elite. I know my sound engraver hasn't seen it yet, and she's going to watch it with me at some point, so I'm not going to spoil it. But you're absolutely right, and the ending is just like, oh man. I mean, it's so profound. It really is. It speaks on so many different levels. Glad you brought that up. So this brings us to Invincible. Now, I know the comic originally came out in 2003. I don't, a lot of people were just saying, oh, the comic's so good. It's so good. You should read this comic called Invincible. It's so good. Now that I watched a little bit of the series, I actually remember, because it's 2003, I remember when people were recommending it to me, I remember that I did flip through it a little bit in the shop. And a lot of people are telling me now, oh, no, the comic's nowhere near as gory as the series was. Dude, I remember flipping through that comic back then and seeing a lot of blood and gore and a lot of this stuff. I don't know about that. But 2003 was a different time. You didn't have not even the New 52 come about yet. So people who defend Invincible and want to talk about how good it is say it's really about Omni-Man's son. I forget the character's name now, but his hero name is Invincible, obviously. And it's about his journey and how he wants to try to be a real iconic superhero, and he's up against these incredible, horrible odds of his father being like an evil Superman type, So it's you got that sort of overcoming story. Okay, you can have a story that focuses on that. Why do you need to deconstruct the idea of a Superman character in order to tell that story? You don't at all. That's a specific choice that was made. Now, I'm not prepared. I know I have no interest in even reading the comic book, but I know some people are just like, oh, kill you in your sleep if you say something bad about it. I'm not prepared to go back. I haven't, at least at this point, gone back to think about, okay, let me check out what was going on in 2003. Could this have worked in the same way that something like Injustice worked? But I'm just where I'm at right now in 2021. I don't care. Why would I ever go back and read those comics? If I want a story about a young hero trying to be iconic and trying to overcome great odds, I can find that a million different places that don't include crapping on a Superman archetype. And people are trying to say, oh, you're the Invincible series, it's so good. I watched the first episode. I couldn't get past the first episode. I was enjoying it at first because as I was watching it, I completely honestly forgot that Omni-Man ends up being evil. I forgot about that. So during the most of the episode, I'm thinking, it's kind of cool. The animation's wonderful. They kind of took that Young Justice approach, with the animation style and everything like that. That was cool. I didn't care for all of the profanity right off the bat. I'm like, this is a cartoon, guys. It's a cartoon about superheroes. Children are going to be watching that. Like, I'm not all the way Darwin Cook about it, but yeah, a certain extent, yeah. Come on, what's the point? We'll talk about Watchmen here in a second, but I'm just talking with Invincible now. This is that was a problem. Then in the end, and I think the comic did it differently. I believe the comic did it differently, where you've got the Omni-Man basically killing the whole quote unquote Justice League much closer to the beginning. But this series just shows you how far our culture's fallen, where it wanted to give you an entire episode of Omni-Man, such a wonderful hero, the Guardians, their Justice League type team, they're so wonderful, and it makes you kind of get to know Red Rush. Is Red Rush his name? I think, and the fish guy, I forget all their names, the archetypes, the Aquaman type, the Wonder Woman type. You kind of get to know them a little bit, and you're like, that's really cool. That's really cool. You kind of get to like them a little bit, and you're really pulling for Invincible's character and whatnot. You even sort of get to know Omni-Man a bit. And then at the very end of the episode, this is how bad writing and how much they privilege the idea of subverting your expectations in our culture today. Then they have Omni-Man come in and just not just slaughter the Justice League type team, but brutally slaughter. I mean, blood and guts. You see terror on their faces as he's mutilating them. It is, I was disgusted. I was disgusted that this garbage was on my TV. And honestly, I was a little teed off at people who were telling me I should go watch this piece of crap. I mean, I really was. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me to go watch some garbage show like that. It's going to have a character who's supposed to be a Superman type go slaughter the Justice. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you that that's the kind of story you want to spend your time with? As you can see, I'm really angry. And I was angry that I was made to watch that by people's stupid recommendations to watch this show. Now, I know that people are going to tell me, oh, but that's not the point of the show. The point of the show is Invincible trying to overcome that. Well, you know, that's not the point of how they portrayed it in this series. That episode, they don't give you any reasoning for it. They let that whole brutal carnage of a scene serve as the cliffhanger to get you to watch the next episode. That is the worst type of writing. I mean, the worst type of writing. If you're writing a series, same thing as you're writing a novel with chapters, you have to pay attention to the overall arc. That's important. But if you're not paying attention to your episodic arc as well, then you're not writing well. You're not writing well at all. That kind of, oh, we fooled you. Look at this horrible, horrible, traumatic garbage scene we're going to put here in the end so that you'll come back and watch the second episode. Who would come back? Who would come? I don't want to see more of that garbage. I don't want to know, you know, and I looked up the synopsis of it a little bit and just, so I'd be able to talk about it a little bit more in, in the know. But no, it's ridiculous. I don't want any part of that. Why would you? I don't understand. And, again, since I haven't read the comic, I've only flipped through it. I'm not prepared to say that the comic is horrible and no one should read the comic or whatever. I can't say that without reading it. I can say I have no desire to read it myself. Because again, if I want a story about just a young hero who's aspirational and trying to overcome great odds, I can get it in a million different places. Don't have to get it with a deconstructed evil Superman type at all. Let's see. Cami Anime S for $9.99. Thank you very much. Said part one of her comment here. I grew up in the 2000s and loved Superman the animated series, as did I. Absolutely. And Legion of Superheroes. Absolutely. And Superman versus the Elite. 100%. But after watching and seeing all these evil takes of evil Superman and changing of his character in the comics, I was forget it. I'm moving on to a better inspirational character. And me as a kid, though, that's where my love for Goku came from. That's cool. I mean, there are some in anime. I don't talk about anime much anymore. Just because anime fans just kind of sucked my interest out of it. They were just relentless, just bashing me over the head with it all the time. But I really did enjoy My Hero Academia. I mean, Deku, oh my gosh, talk about an aspirational hero and All Might and that and everything. If people shut up about anime to me for a certain amount of time, maybe I'll go check out Goku because I like what you're saying about it there. But yeah, I mean, there are aspirational heroes to be found other places. Now, anime is not the one and only answer. I know some weebs are just like, oh, flush Western civilization and go to anime only. Join us. But and it seems like there are a lot of great characters. I've heard great things about One Punch Man and so forth. So yeah, I mean, search that out and find those, sure, but that's not the only answer. And we'll get to those here in the end a little bit. But what is it doing to our culture? Here's what it's doing to our culture. We know, since we no longer privilege or hold sacred what this aspirational paragon type hero is. Now, when I say that word sacred, what I mean is, I've said this before, but let me just recontextualize it, recapitulate it here so that we can understand and be on the same page. Our mythologies always draw a culture together. Historically, that's always been the case. Historically, throughout Western civilization, of course, a culture's mythology was their religion. So they were encouraged to, or many of them at least actually believed in these gods and these characters or whatever, believed in these stories. And then those stories, because they were their actual gods and whatnot, taught them what attitudes, what behaviors to shun, what attitudes and what behaviors to latch onto and to emulate. Mythology builds culture. It's part of it. So as a culture's mythology goes, so goes that culture, so goes that society. And you can see that in the Roman times. I mean, the fall of the Roman Empire. Look at the kind of the stories they were telling about their gods and stuff to one point. I mean, it was total debauchery and ridiculousness. And so you can that's a whole study you can do. The difference with today, though, is that in America and many other places in the world, we don't live in a society in which there's one national or accepted by all of our society religion. So we have to look elsewhere for our mythologies because we don't have just one religion, but even though we are in a world of many different religions, or we're in a country or society of many different religions, we are still a society built on the basic Judeo-Christian foundation of self-sacrifice, of service to others, and all of that kind of thing. So that's, and those elements can be shown in different ways through other religions and whatnot, but you're going to need elements of that strongly in our mythology. So what is our mythology? If it's no longer a certain religion that we all believe in, then it has to be a shared system of stories, a shared system of fiction. And we're not just all as a society going to decide on one, we're not just going to vote and decide, okay, DC superheroes are our mythology. No, it becomes a entertainment industry. It becomes sort of a supply and demand. So you have several out there, so we have things like superheroes in general. When MCU really brought the Marvel universe into the greater spotlight, greater cultural spotlight, we had that for a while. Things like Star Wars, for so long. I mean, think about how long that original trilogy stuck around and stuck in people's hearts when they didn't receive a single thing on the big screen after Return of the Jedi, and then, the original trilogy. I mean, think about the staying power of that. So you have these shared fictions that even if people aren't, reading all of it and becoming geeks like, most of us are here and really kind of going through it all, they still know of it in general. They still know of it in general and want to follow that. But now look at what's being done to them. As I said last week, and you can go check that stream and the video I made after it. Look what they're doing to the MCU. They're picking apart all of the great heroism. They're no longer telling hero stories at all. Look at what we've done to DC. I talked about that plenty on my channel. Look at what Dan DiDio did with the New 52, all because he was bored by Superman. He was bored by the shiny, aspirational DC universe, wanted to make it all dark and edgy, make it all over in a darker version of Batman image. And then that led to Snyder's movies and deconstructing them all. We're just bringing down that bar, bringing down that standard. Look at what we've done to Star Wars now. We've let Disney do that to us, and people can't stop. They can't stop. Oh, but I got to watch the new series. Oh, but as I said before, Falcon and Winter Soldier is actually kind of good and well written. I'm hearing some of the same people. This is ridiculous to me. I'm hearing some of the same people who try to defend or try to justify watching Falcon and Winter Soldier series. Those same people are expressing disgust at DC making a Superman movie with a black Superman now. Are you dense? Where do you think DC got the idea? Oh, Marvel's making a black Captain American series. We should do that with Superman. Let's do that with Superman. You're the reason we're getting a black Superman movie. Don't sit there and watch Falcon and Winter Soldier and tell me that, that's actually pretty good. But yeah, black Superman, that's just crazy. You told them to do it by your support. Do you really not see that connection? And Warner Brothers has a long history of not understand, just making the most ridiculous non sequitur choices for these characters. As I said, Tim Burton does some cool Batman movies. Just let him do Superman. No, that doesn't follow at all. Bryan Singer did X-Men movie. Let's get him on Superman. No. Chris Nolan did really dark takes on Batman. Let's get him to do Superman. No. Zack Snyder did The Watchmen. He should direct Superman. No. So this is them making the same stupid mistake and it falls within the culture of Hollywood. It's more important to virtue signal. It's more important to get woke points than it is to be faithful to any of these characters, to tell any of their stories. And it's so disingenuous. It's so insincere. That if they were really concerned with doing let's make sure we get some good African-American or good black superheroes out there in the culture, they've got a wealth of them to choose from, right? I mean, I think it'd be wrong to go to any of the instances where there were black Supermen from alternate universes or whatever, because again, let's get the main iconic one right before we go on other Elseworlds and alternate universes. But there are a wealth of them. I mean, what about Fan Man always talks about Steel. He likes the Steel character, but there are others. What about Jon Stewart? Why is Jon Stewart not in any Justice League incarnation now? Why do they keep having to turn other characters and make them black just for representation? We've got a whole wealth of them in the comics. You've got Jon Stewart, you've got Black Lightning. There's the Green Lanterns. I mean, talk about ethnic diversity. What about Ethan Van Sciver? Well, that's the reason, right? Because Ethan Van Sciver created Jessica Cruz. They'll never put Jessica Cruz on screen because Ethan Van Sciver did it, and he's a bad man. He voted for Trump. That's the usual nonsense that the main society goes by. But Jessica Cruz, a Latina, and don't you even think for a second I'm going to say Latinx. She's a Latina who comes by the Green Lantern. Simon Baz, who is he's Middle Eastern descent. I forget exactly what his ethnicity was. But there are characters out there, but no, they don't want to do that. They don't want to make a Falcon movie. No. Make Falcon take over Captain America. Don't make a Jon Stewart movie. No. Make a black man Superman. This is what they've been doing in the comics forever. It's not about actual representation. It's not about equal rights or anything like that. It's about woke points. And the way that you get woke points nowadays and please the Twitter mob is by killing off or tearing down, deconstructing these white heteronormative characters and replacing them with minority characters. It's ridiculous. A couple super chats here. Let me make sure I'm all the way back to the one. First of all, thank you very much, Jackhammer City, shall we say biatch, for $1. The message retracted. Sorry about that, but thank you for the $1. Owen Lister for $4.99 says, while I don't mind violent superhero stories, but the hero still needs to be the hero, like Blade, John Wick, and Guyver. There is a place for violent hero stories. Daredevil stories tend to be, the Daredevil seasons on Netflix. They were pretty violent and brutal, but there was heroism. I mean, you can't watch that hallway scene as I talk about in season 1. It's brutal. It's graphic. It is like you feel bones crunching and it's wow. And yet it's all about doing the right thing, laying his rights down, laying his life on the line, going to immense personal cost and pain himself just to save this little boy. I mean, you can't deny the heroism that's just bleeding through that scene. It's wonderful. Jack Hammer again for $10. Thank you very much. Says, Professor Geek, I like Invincible, but the best adaptation of Superman right now is All Might, with My Hero Academia being the best superhero adaptation in both manga and anime for right now. I really like All Might too. I really like All Might. The difference, in the My Hero Academia story, the difference between all for one and one for all, right? His power is one for all, meaning I lay my life down for I'm serving others. And the villain, who's the villain? It's all for one, all about me. And as I said in my videos, our live stream last week chronicling the MCU, what is all their stories about right now? All their quote unquote heroes are focused on themselves. How have I been wronged? Society's not ready for me. Society's victimizing me. Me. That's what they're all about now. They're no longer telling hero stories. And that's what DC will do with a Black Superman movie. They will. Sin City Taoist, I almost said Sin City Toast. I'm sure you get that a lot. Sin City Taoist for $5. Thank you very much. Says, it makes me sad that the MCU will never feature a good aspirational hero like the Silver Surfer because they have no interest in doing him right. They have no interest in doing any of their heroes right. I never follow Silver Surfer much. Like I said, I grew up on DC. I came to really enjoy Marvel when the MCU got popular. And I went back and started reading the original Stan Lee incarnations and some other such, but I didn't really get so far as to reading the Silver Surfer much. But that's cool. I mean, I do know the basic story, a servant of Galactus, who ends up going against that, for the sake of right and heroism. Cami Anime S, thank you very much again for another super chat. When do you feel comfortable in all these weebs? Get off your back. I would love to hear your opinion on My Hero and manga or the anime show. That would be great with you. I don't know if they're still available because they might have been part of other live streams or whatever. But there were some where I talked about it, I think on like old office hour streams or whatever that I took down for other reasons. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to do that. I'd like to get back into it one day. Maybe I will. you know, I really did enjoy it. I really did enjoy it. As much as I didn't like a lot of the tropes, a lot of the little anime-ish tropes, you know, of the overreactions and stuff like that. That story just, man, it spoke to me. It spoke to me so much of Deku's, heart and his journey and the way that he wants to do right. I mean, for example, the moment when they, I forget what season it is or whatever, but when they're having the competition at his school, and he's going up against, and it's been so long since I watched it again that I'm blanking on some characters' names, but the friend of his who's part fire and part ice, he has to go up against him in this competition. And Deku would rather help that classmate work through his trauma and accept the fire side that deals with his father's trauma and everything. It's more important to him to help that friend of his than it is to win that match. I mean, that was beautiful. That was even All Might himself was like, come on, guy, win the match, you know. But All Might itself is totally aspirational. That's just, man, these things are just wonderful when they go into that direction. It's really great. Thank you again for the one more super chat there, Cami S, Anime S. Last super chat. Doesn't have to be the last super chat. No, you spent plenty of bit of money. I really appreciate those tips. Those go a long way to help me. I appreciate those and loved your comments tonight. Great stuff. Let me see where. Okay, we're 11:08. So I think it might be about time to do these recommendations here that I want to talk about. The first one, if you look in the description, I actually have links for these. I actually did a video a while back where I talked about the series in general. This was I think an 8-issue series or 6-issue series. And it came about at the end of the New 52 when all we had from Superman was still New 52, dark, brutal, edgy Superman. And as I say in that video review, Mark Millar, of all people, Mark Millar, who's known for writing dark and edgy stuff, came to the realization that we need a Superman. We need a real, true, aspirational Superman. So he did this analog, came out through Image. It's called Huck. And it's about this, and it's an analog in the sense that, it's not a character that's trying to look like Superman or anything, but it's this character who's from a small town. He has these powers. He's just using them to save people. It's a beautiful story. And I go through in the review there and really go through all the issues and I don't spoil it, but I tell you the general gist of it. And in that video, I have a link in the description to where you can buy the actual graphic novel, the collected version. And I have that in the description below as well. So I want to mention that again, since we're talking about Superman analogs, but you can get the full review there. Make sure I'm caught up on comments and everything there. Yeah. Okay. The other, a couple other ones. This one I have. Okay. This one's hard to find. It's pretty rare. They're not printing any more of the graphic novels. You might be able to find some of the individual issues. I've talked about it a little bit before, but I've never done an actual proper review. So I'm going to try to do that somewhat now. And then I will, if it comes off well, I might cut this out of the video and put up its own images over it or something like that. People ask me about Watchmen a lot. And I'll be the first to admit, Watchmen is incredibly well written. It's actually even a really good piece of literature on its own before you think of it as a superhero story, comic story, and all of that. Incredibly well drawn by Dave Gibbons. The story itself is not a problem because you've got an alternate universe heroes. It's not actually killing off or deconstructing any of the heroes there, but the influence that story has made it incredibly detrimental to the comic universe and to superhero stories in general. It should never, that in The Dark Knight Returns, which wasn't an amazing story, it was okay, should never have had the influence that it did. Never. And I think on some level, Alan Moore knew that. You can even hear him say something like that in some of his interviews. And shortly after Watchmen, Rob Liefeld had created the characters over in his own Wildstorm that he created. I forget the name of his comic place there. But he had created characters called... oh shoot, I'm blanking on the name of them now too. Youngblood. A very brutal group of young superheroes and whatnot. And he created this character that was like an evil Superman type character by the name of Supreme. Typical Liefeld, overly, muscular in every way and stuff like that. And he wanted Alan Moore to come write the story for him. Get a little camera focus issue going on there. Hopefully that'll fix it. He wanted Alan Moore to come write for him. And Alan Moore said, okay, I'll write a Supreme story. But if I'm going to write a Supreme story, I want to reboot it. And I no longer want to make him brutal and evil. I want to make him iconic. I want to do the opposite of what I did in Watchmen. And I want to tell a true blue, iconic superhero story, really gets to what superheroism is about. And you might, if you never heard of this, you might think, what? You would never believe it. He does an amazing job, an amazing job. The first one in terms of collections is here. It's Supreme, the story of the year. And this is, like I said, it's hard to find. I do have a link in the description below, but it's like from Amazon. You can get it for like $80 right now. So I don't expect anybody to spend that unless you got it to drop. But you can find it. You can probably find it digitally. I know you can find it online digitally and read it there. You can probably find the individual issues somewhere, whatever, piece it together. I'm glad I got it when it wasn't quite that expensive to find. But I want to go over just the intro and kind of where the story sets up to show you this. The story sets up, you've got this reboot. You have the character of Supreme was off on some mission in space. And he comes back to Earth and he realizes that everything's changed. He's looking around and everything, like people and buildings and everything, are sort of half formed. And he's wondering what's going on. And then suddenly these 3 or 4 different versions of him show up. And it's like alternate Earth versions of Superman, right? You've got like our Supreme in this case, like if Supreme was a black woman or a Supreme who wears a mask and whatnot. You even got a Mighty Mouse version here, the Mighty Mouse version of him, which is hilarious. They come to take him, and Squeak the Super Mouse is what his name is. They come and they're there to bring him to the Platinum Paragon, which if you read Superman's Silver Age Superman stories, you know about this kind of planet or Superman realm or whatever, you know, where all the versions of Superman or everything lived. And it goes through and you've got the Golden Age Supreme who can't fly but can only leap. The Silver Age Supreme rules there. And it's a wonderful moment in which our Supreme that we're following, he's about to be rebooted. He's about to be the new current Supreme character, you know, Superman analog character. So all of the other Supreme versions that came before him are inviting him to their realm there just to give him a good send-off, to tell him, hey, good luck out there. You know, you make the choices. You get to decide what kind of hero you're going to be. And then the rest of the story, when he goes back, is him deciding what kind of Supreme is he going to be. Is he going to fall into line with the modern, you know, this was written in the 90s, so the type of stories of that day that were, you know, edgy and dark and ridiculous. Is he going to fall in with that? Or is he going to be really, truly what the character should be? The iconic version of why Supreme in this case, but Superman, we all know, why Supreme has had such an effect on culture. And that's what he does. That's what he chooses. There are these wonderful flashbacks throughout the whole series, which are supposed to be like Silver Age Supreme stories. And they're basically Silver Age Superman stories. They're wonderful. You know, you get him in a Smallville analog with his parents, you know, getting all the values and everything. You've got your Lana figure, your Jimmy Olsen figure comes in later. It's a wonderful, wonderful epic story. You've got analogs for the Justice League, and they themselves look to him. That's a cool element of the story because, as I've said many times, the DC universe, as Superman goes, so goes the DC universe. That's why it was ridiculous in New 52 to reshape everything on the crux of Batman. And they still try to hang that on Batman. Or now they're trying to say Wonder Woman was the first hero, or whatever, you know. As Superman goes, so goes the DC universe. And the Supreme, the Alan Moore Supreme universe here follows that because all of the rest of the Justice League around him, if the universe has been rebooted, so have they. And they're looking to him is to kind of cue them into what kind of heroes they'll be. And they follow suit as well. It's a wonderful story. And if you get through it and you like it, you're not alone with just this volume. There is one called The Return as well, which I haven't read yet. I have it, though, but I want to read it as well. That's another place. If we're talking about Superman analogs and you want to find, okay, DC's not giving us good superhero story, good Superman stories. Marvel's certainly not giving us anything like a real Captain America story anymore. Where do we get it? You know, and you get it by the analogs and people who out there. So like Huck, which isn't directly a Superman analog. Huck's more like a version of an aspirational hero that we would need. Supreme's very much a Superman analog. There, Alex Ross does a lot of the art, which is great, you know, for covers and whatnot. And there are actual, you know, there's a a Crypto-like character, a Supergirl-like character, all these kind of, so it's pretty much a direct analog. The last thing that I'll mention here, and I have a link to purchase it in the description below as well. And I'm not going to give as in-depth a review of this yet because it's been ages since I read it, and I want to reread it so I can say some more specific things about it. This is something that many of you know about, I know, but some don't. This was in 1990, I think this was released. Superman, Secret Identity. This was by Kurt Busiek and Stuart Immonen, the artist, and the art's great too. This is an interesting idea. This became what DC Comics kind of ruined later with the idea of this Superboy Prime character they have. What you have here is a character in a world like our own, where superheroes really aren't a thing, just a normal universe in which Superman comic books, those stories are actual comic books. They're actual fiction. But you have a young boy living in rural Kansas on a farm who just happens to be named Clark Kent. And because of that, people are always, oh, it's like Superman, right? Like Superboy, right? And everything like that. And he's dealing with this. But then what if the story is basically about what if a young man from our universe, from our planet, received the powers of Superman? Suddenly this young man receives the powers of Superman. What does he do with them? And it's really, despite what you might hear about the character of Superboy Prime later, because DC really ruined the character later, this is glorious. This is glorious. They really do an incredible take on it. The story really shows you what a real superhero should be, what a real Superman character should be. The character of Superboy Prime 2 kind of comes from even earlier stories. I think like Bronze Age, Elliot S. Megan telling some stories about it as well. So you've got really great aspects of it there. But Superman's Secret Identity, another graphic novel, linked in the description below. I think about $20 for the graphic novel, $18, something like that. These are some other places you can find really good, solid stories that are really telling wonderful, aspirational hero stories. So 3 there, I gave you specifically Superman related. Don't forget Heart of the Jedi too for the Star Wars EU. Owen Lister for $4.99. Thank you very much. Says last super chat. I'd love to discuss my Beetle Blaze project and other stories I'd love to work on with you sometime on stream. Well, I do charge for editing, a consultation and stuff like that. I don't know if I have the time directly right now, but I do really love, Owen Lister is a member of the Professor Geek group, Facebook group on Facebook. Duh. I don't think I put the link to the group in the chat below, but somebody in the group or one of our admins or whatever, I'm sure will throw up a link. Or if not, you can search Professor Geek on Facebook. You'll find the group. You do have to answer the questions that are there, to get in and everything. It's a closed group, like in terms of private. You can't just see everything until you join it and are accepted, because we have had plenty of trolls trying to make their way in and spread their Snyder trolling and stuff like that, But in that group, Owen Lister's posted a lot of his art from his Beetle Blaze comic, as have other people. Wolf 10 Media, Dr. Yeisley have posted. A lot of people post their original art, and not just me. A lot of people give feedback on it and say that's really cool. Or some other people post aspects of the story. I know Horizon Talker has posted some of his stories as well. So it's a great community of many other artists themselves or writers themselves, but just a lot of people who understand what hero stories are supposed to be, and therefore write them there. So it's a great place. It's a great place to go to post your work and, sometimes get a little feedback, it's a good place to go too, as Owen has done many times. So thank you for that, Owen. I very much appreciate that very much. And my dear sound engraver has just posted the link. So thank you very much, dear. So I am out of steam. My voice is a little bit out. It's a little bit done. I need to go drink some water and recharge the old introvert batteries. But I want to thank you guys, dearly thank you guys. And Brian Martinez, if you're still here, Honey Badger Radio, I'm sorry, man. I know it's got to be frustrating. I will get with you. I will get with you. We'll do it. Yeah, it's just hard for me to find places and times and stuff like that, but we'll do it. I'll hit you back via email at some point here. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of the contributions you made to the chat. Now, when I do these streams on Friday night, I have a lot of prepared material. So I go through it and I'm really kind of giving my, lecture almost. It's like, it's like when I'm teaching a class, I've got this prepared material, so I'm going to go through it. That means I can't really go through and read the chat necessarily. I certainly will read super chats because they're paying for the chats to be read, so of course I'm going to do that. But I apologize for not being able to read everybody else's chats. In other kind of streams, I certainly do. I'll go through, and if people tag me, I can have the time to do that. But nonetheless, I have seen so many of the chats, as I'm looking down at it. chats that are pretty interesting and whatnot. So you guys are contributing, having good conversation with each other. I can go back and watch the replay sometimes and look for some things that people have said. So I really do appreciate that. It's great. So I thank you guys for being a part of it. This is great. We've had, oh my gosh, there's still 167 watching right now. I don't even know what it came up to in the middle. I wasn't paying attention, so it'd be great to know. But these Friday night streams are growing. I do need a good name for the Friday night streams. I was thinking about something like Night Class or something like that, or Night School with the Prof or something, but didn't really run off the tongue just yet. It's close. It's somewhere there. So I appreciate that. Do see a couple more super chats here. Evar Jantz for $5. Thank you very much. So the good series with analogs of popular superheroes that are actually heroic is Astro City. Personal favorite of mine is the story Astro City Victory. Did I start reading Astro City? Was that? No. It was something else I was reading. It was Alex Ross's. Is Alex Ross behind Astro City? Maybe it was Astro City. I started reading some of it, and it was really interesting, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you brought that up too. I should get back to that and read some more of that. Tisan Young for $4.99. Thank you very much for the super chat. Says, what are your thoughts on Superman American Alien, if you're familiar with that comic? Oh, I wish I was not familiar with that comic. That tells you what my thoughts are on it right there. I despise that comic. Max Landis, for someone who talks about understanding Superman so much and caring about the character so much, I was curious to read, okay, he's finally going to do his own story. What? There's nothing wholesome about this story. You've got Superman working. It was bizarre. And a lot of my problems, some, not all of it, but a lot of my problems with the Man of Tomorrow animated Superman film came from their you can see direct influence and direct inspiration from American Alien. I'm sure there are some good things in it, but I don't care for it. Don't really care for it. So MCovsky, thank you very much for another super chat that just applied to your group. Awesome. Well, if you answer the questions and everything, I'm sure you'll get in. You will check it here afterwards after the stream. But thank you very much. That's great, wonderful to have you. Kurt Busiak is Astro City. I see it in the chat. Okay, that's it. So what was the one I was thinking of? The one I was thinking of is it's Alex Ross's. It's got like a Daredevil analog. The Daredevil character is weird too. The name is like Daring Daredevil or something like that. It's bizarre, but it was pretty deep. That was kind of Alex Ross's baby, I think. But yeah, Kurt Busiak was Astro City. I've heard good things about Astro City, so I should check that out. So thank you very much. Oh, I'm gonna go take a rest, guys. But thank you so much for everybody contributing, and it was a blast. Always fun. I will be back Friday, obviously, and I'll be back on at some point this week to do some more game streams because I really want to finish up the Knights of the Old Republic story playthrough for people who haven't played the game or don't play games necessarily, so that story can be out there before we start our Darth Bane trilogy book study, which will be on Thursday nights as soon as I finish up the Knights of the Old Republic story gameplay through for people. So I'll probably be doing a lot of those actually the next few nights. I've got a few nights to myself where Alyssa's off on a trip with her mother, so I'll have quite a bit of time. So we'll probably look for some of that. Maybe we can finish out that story quickly so we can go ahead and bust into some Darth Bane trilogy. That'll be a lot of fun. So thanks everyone. We will continue our Inspiration of Heroes stream. We've got some cool guests lined up. Leia Plus Size is going to be on there at some point, as well as some others. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. And until next time, don't forget to consume stories responsibly and keep enjoying the stories and whatever I usually say, because I totally mess myself up by throwing in consume stories responsibly. So goodbye.